Hello, I'm David. I work for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, and I have the pleasure of being here with Councillor Andy from Basingstoke and Deane Council. And Andy has introduced a motion successfully to the council to declare an ecological emergency, which is incredibly exciting. And I'm just going to talk to him now about why that is such an exciting thing and what the effect might be. So hello, Andy, nice to meet you.
Thank you, David, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. I wanted to ask you, before we get to the detail of what you introduced, why? What was the driving thing about nature or nature's decline that was really getting you inspired to introduce this motion?
So I grew up in rural Leicestershire and was surrounded by green spaces, farms, fields, woodland from a very early age. And I think I used to take it for granted. And it was only when I moved to London for my first job and realised that not everywhere in the country had access to such abundant wildlife that I began to miss it. And it's, I think as always in life, it's you don't really appreciate what you have until it's gone. So from that point on, I suddenly did start paying much more attention to nature, to ecology, to wildlife. And it doesn't take very long, unfortunately, to see that Mother Nature is, unfortunately, very much on the ropes at the moment. You look at the number of species that are under threat, you look at how much green space is being reduced each year, and yet we rely on nature for so much. We rely on it for food, we rely on it for medicine, we rely on it for raw materials. And I think a lot of us have discovered over the past couple of years or so since the pandemic started just how much we rely on the natural environment for our mental and physical well-being. So it's for all of these reasons really, which is when I was approached by the Basingstoke Transition Network to put together a motion to declare an ecological emergency, I was very keen to make sure that happened.
Fantastic, yeah. It sadly is true. So we are now bottom of the G7 countries for nature abundance and richness, and I think we're the bottom 10% of all countries worldwide. So much of our nature has gone. I think we've only got about half of it left at this point, which is shocking. And that kind of brings us nicely to the motion that you introduced, this ecological emergency. That, I mean, not all of us are experts. So what is an ecological emergency? It sounds a bit of one of those terms that might not be immediately understandable to everyone. So what does it mean?
Well, as a Borough Council, we declared a climate emergency a couple of years ago, and that forced us to very quickly, hence the term emergency, to look at as a local authority and as a borough what we can do to tackle climate change. And the ecological emergency is a natural complement to that and follows on. And the idea is to recognise that nature is on the ropes, globally, nationally, but locally as well, within Basingstoke, within Hampshire, and that the local authority and all the people within it have a responsibility to do something about it and actually have an opportunity to do something about that as well. So the motion commits us as a local authority, both operationally and strategically, to make sure that ecological issues as well as climate issues are a golden thread that run through everything we do. So in our day-to-day roles within the local authority, when we're looking at policies and strategies for the future, including important areas such as the local plan, we need to be thinking climate emergency, we need to be thinking ecological emergency, and making sure that that's always there at the forefront of our minds.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think people can often look at these statements or these declarations and sometimes question whether they have any oomph to them, whether they're actually going to achieve anything in the real world. It's nice to get a bit of press and talk about, so we've done this and we're going to declare that, but you're confident this will actually have a real tangible impact?
I think that's an absolutely valid concern, and that's why part of the motion is around making sure that we monitor our progress, that we set tough targets for ourselves, and that we make sure that we are meeting those targets. And if we're failing, we need to work out what's going wrong and how we can get it done. So absolutely, I think there are those of us who want to do a lot more quickly, but it's up to us as an authority to make sure that we now stick to the commitment that we've made, that we deliver on these promises, and that we take all of our residents along there with us.
Fantastic. Another question people might have is, the climate emergency and nature's decline internationally, deforestation, the Amazon, and these really big problems. Basingstoke and Deane it's a wonderful place, but it's a small place. It's a local authority within Hampshire in one part of the country. So people might ask, is it our responsibility locally to be dealing with these really big problems? And so, is it worth our time at a local level getting involved in doing that? What would you say to those people?
Everybody at the individual level, all the way through to national governments, through to organisations such as the G7 or the G20, have a responsibility to help tackle climate change and to fix the ecological crisis that we're facing. Local authorities have a huge role to play in terms of the impact that they have on the borough. So when you look at what they're responsible for, and working together as well with the county council, there's all sorts of issues that they can influence. Perhaps the biggest one, and one that's quite pertinent to us at the moment, we are going through our local plan update, which will then determine the local plan and sort of our borough housing strategy for the next few decades, and will then actually probably shape how Basingstoke and Deane looks as a borough and how it behaves as a borough for the next century or so. So this is a hugely significant and important document. And we made sure that we declared the ecological emergency before we went too far down the track of this local plan update, so that we could start influencing that. So as I said earlier, the ecological emergency and the climate emergency can run through all of the documents like a golden thread, and feed through in terms of all of the policies. So when a developer or any other stakeholder takes a look at this document, we leave them in absolutely no doubt what it is as a borough that we want to achieve, and what their role is in helping us to achieve that.
Great. One final question then, Andy. Obviously, you're an opposition councillor in Basingstoke and Deane, but the party in charge right now, the Conservatives, they actually accepted your motion, didn't they? Because so often people say on big issues like climate and nature, wouldn't it just be great if people could be working together a bit more productively about this? Because it should be something that everyone's concerned about. So do you think this is something that, every party should be engaged with and every party should be involved in?
Absolutely. One of the most pleasing aspects of this whole process was not just the fact that the motion was passed, but that the motion was passed unanimously. So it's a motion that was put forward by the Liberal Democrats and the independent group in Basingstoke, but it was supported by all other groups, including Labour and the Conservatives.
Yeah, wonderful. So a model that other councils can be following, essentially, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I don't think this is a partisan policy issue. It's one of those rare moments as politicians where we're all on the same side. We all can see where we need to go, and we can join forces, work together, and make it happen. And it's one of my proudest moments as a local politician.
Wonderful. So we need to get out there and get all the other councils declaring ecological or nature emergencies everywhere then.
Absolutely. I think that's the way forward. We've seen from the recent COP26 summit what's happening at a national and a global level. Let's follow that lead. Let's take advantage of the opportunity. There is clearly an issue where if there's a will and a desire to solve these problems, and I have absolutely no doubt that we can, as local authorities, whether borough councils or county councils across the country.
Fantastic, Andy. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing the good work that the council gets up to in future.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.